This is a video about what became possible in my life after I learned about feminine energy and the art of seduction and created my concept of feminine seduction and changed my life and transformed the way that my love life looked in a major 180 way. So let's do it. Let's just dive in. Preface. During my teen years, I was romantically overlooked. I was one of two girls in my high school class who did not get asked to senior prom by an obliging classmate. I went on to date men I hadn't agreed to date, men who were in love with other women, or men who were with other women and lying to both of us. I went through a phase in college where I dated guys who were friends of friends, thinking it would solve my so-called aversion to nice guys. After college, my work led me to travel abroad, so I dated on 3 different continents. Surely, I reasoned, there was a great man somewhere on earth who would find me appealing. Instead, I was strung along, left, lied to, emotionally abused, and ghosted in 5 different languages. I wanted a huge romance with passion and fun and excitement, but my experience with men was always that A, they didn't really try to get to know me, B, they didn't want to spend much time with me, or C, they weren't ready for any kind of commitment. I wasn't someone men wanted. Years of building up hope and being disappointed by love interests left me discouraged. It began to feel like I was waiting for the next wrong man to show up and fail me. I waited and wished for the magical day when my dream partner would finally arrive and love me fully and totally for who I am. It felt like everyone around me was capable of finding someone to commit to them. For years, I watched as friends and acquaintances got into relationships, left relationships, and found new relationships, and sometimes created serious relationships. Several of my friends got married and started families of their own. Yet I remained consistently single, feeling left out and left behind in love. Honestly, I worried I might be an unlovable freak. And then, by some twist of fate, I discovered the science and spiritual art behind creating relationships, and I transformed the way dating went for me. At the time of my discovery, I was living in Bucharest. I was casually seeing Constantine, a long-lashed, strong-jawed Romanian. He was tall, attractive, intelligent, and kind. When I say we were casually seeing each other, I mean he would say things like, "Let's hang out Sunday," and I would reply, "Yes, please," and then he would cease to communicate with me for another week and a half. By that time in my dating history, I was used to being treated that way and did not protest. What differentiated Constantine from other men I had dated was that he refused to sleep with me. His refusal contradicted my usual dating belief that men only wanted to date me for sex, so I was partially intrigued by his denial of sexual contact with me. Unfortunately, I interpreted his avoidance of sex as further confirmation that I was undesirable. I took it to mean that I was so undesirable that even a man dating me had to use non-religious reasons to avoid sleeping with me. We would take steamy showers together and make out in bed, and then he would say goodnight and turn over to sleep. I was cast into a world of insecurity and doubt. Was he gay or asexual, or did he just not like me very much? He would call me on the phone and talk about culture and philosophy for hours. He took me on sexy spa dates where we would soak half naked in mineral pools. We sweat in 11 different saunas while attendants splashed us with ice water or offered us diffused aromatherapeutic oils to inhale. We smeared exfoliating mud on each other's bodies. After these sensual dates, he would drop me off at my home nonchalantly as bedtime came around, rather than suggesting we spend the night together. "Thank you for tonight," I would say graciously. "That was wonderful." And then I would close the car door and turn towards my apartment building door, feeling alone, utterly lost, confused, and helpless. I was already certain that I was unwanted and incompetent at love, so his actions affirmed that belief. I did not have insight into how my own actions created a lack of intimacy and connection between us. I never asked him why he wouldn't sleep with me or invite him into my apartment. But no matter how disappointing it was to date him, I didn't want to date anyone else. I was so tired of trying and failing to find the kind of love I wanted. I was tired of the fact that dating only led to heartbreak, the small ones and the large ones, sending me on emotional roller coasters that left me drained, and sometimes dysfunctional in other areas of life. I settled for his inconsistent companionship and non-committal attention because at least I knew to expect nothing from him. I surrendered fully to the idea that the kind of love I craved was either non-existent or not meant for me. Around 4 months into this kind of half-hearted dating, we made dinner at his place and he suggested we shower together. I knew this meant caressing each other's naked bodies with soap and making out under hot water. It was late, so I knew he wouldn't want to drive me home after, and I would be spending the night. Perhaps it would finally be the night he wanted to sleep with me. I went to the bathroom and began undressing. He did not join me. I finished undressing and turned on the water, adjusting the tap to the perfect heat and allowing the water to fall freely from the shower head. He was not yet there, but I stepped into the bathtub. I stood naked at the dry end of the tub, observing Constantine's movements through the open bathroom door. He was still down the hall, straightening up the living room. Several minutes ago, he had suggested the shower, but it seemed his plan had shifted to prioritize cleanliness. He picked up glasses and bowls from our meal and took them into the kitchen. He washed the dishes, dried them, and put them away. I stood there with the water running, by myself, soapless, watching and waiting. Thoughts were flying through my mind. I'm dating a man who would rather wash dishes than be naked in the shower with me. I come second on the priority list to dishes. Men never say no to a naked woman. What is it about me that I can end up with a man who doesn't even want me for my body? 15 minutes later, when the living room was fully in order, the kitchen scrubbed, and the cups dried and put away, he entered the bathroom. He took off his clothes and joined me in the shower, ready to wash me with the same tenderness I believe the dishes received. Afterward, I sat on the edge of his bed wearing one of his t-shirts, quiet and pensive as he got ready for sleep. I was already heading into the familiar territory of the shutdown I experienced when dating was going poorly. When we were both settled in bed, I mustered up enough bravery to ask a direct question. "So, you don't want to have sex?" I inquired, the words feeling coarse and awkward as I spoke them into the world. "I'm practicing an ancient Tibetan technique of no sex," he replied. "Oh," I said, "cool." And that was that. He offered no further explanation, and I was too confused by his answer to ask further questions. As he fell asleep, I lay awake pondering my dating history. The boys who never wanted me, the men who disappeared and reappeared in my life, willing to play with me, unwilling to take me seriously, wanting me, but never all of me. Finally, feeling alone, lying right next to him, I drifted off to sleep. At home the next day, I decided to look into that ancient Tibetan technique Constantine was practicing. I Googled ancient Tibetan sexual techniques. What was he working on? What benefits would it give him? What was he trying to achieve? There was no immediately clear answer to my query. There were many Tibetan sexual techniques, ranging from energy work to breathing techniques, and a host of philosophical teachings. I was fascinated, but I could not find any mention of a technique where sex was avoided, except in cases of monastic celibacy. I kept digging. Surely, some corner of the internet would mention this technique. As I searched, I came across other dating techniques and relationship research. I found therapists and coaches who helped people overcome a plethora of romantic issues. There were countless programs, books, articles, all devoted to helping people just like me who were struggling to find the love they wanted to experience. Over many months, I went down a rabbit hole of ancient Tibetan philosophy, tantra, energy work, and scientific dating and mating research. It became the single focus of my non-working hours. I watched TED Talks and YouTube videos over dinner and read books and articles by relationship experts and marriage psychologists while traveling to work on the metro. I consumed information about dating psychology and the neurology of attraction and sexual arousal before bed. I devoted every weekend, Constantine suggested that we see each other and then disappeared, to the study of dating. I watched reality TV shows about first dates and new relationships to observe what I was learning in action. The research and the stories on screen brought me face to face with all the mistakes I had made with men over the years. Acknowledging my mistakes presented me with new ways to approach dating and relationships. I began to see how I had silenced my voice, asked for less than I desired, and tried to please men to keep them around. Unfortunately, I had tried to please men without first understanding what they wanted. And I had made my own desire less important than theirs. Over and over again, I had kept what I wanted secret in order to avoid being hurt, and ironically ended up hurt every time. I had dated passively, waiting for a man to prove himself to me, without giving him directions on what to prove. I had not allowed men to make me happy, and I had ended up dissatisfied in love. I had disbelieved I was worthy of the love I wanted. I spent more time worrying about whether I was attractive enough for the person I was dating than getting to know who they were and what they wanted. I had subconsciously been waiting for someone to show me I was worthy of the love I wanted, instead of claiming it for myself and not settling for less. With one exception, I had avoided true intimacy in every connection. I had failed to ask important questions. I had poor boundaries and weird energy around attraction. I had believed that love would simply happen for me as I assumed it happened for others. By acknowledging my mistakes and integrating the new information available to me, I began to transform my thoughts about dating. Outside of Buddhist monk culture and complete devotion to celibacy, I never found mention of any ancient Tibetan techniques that require men to abstain from sex. Likely, Constantine made that up, and I did not bother to ask him more about it. Although there was a high level of intellectual intimacy in our relationship, and we could always share highbrow ideas, there was no deep emotional intimacy and trust. I did not trust him with my feelings, and I spent a lot of energy tiptoeing around what I perceived his feelings to be. I didn't try to apply what I was learning with him. I was just absorbing information in the background. As the months passed and I studied dating, nothing much changed in our relationship. We were both committed to our non-commitment to each other. We had game nights with groups of his friends, went to festivals together, and had deep phone conversations. Looking back from where I am now, it is astounding how little emotional intimacy we managed to create after spending so much time together. Time does not equal intimacy. He was consistently inconsistent, and I was consistently passive about his behavior and feelings. I made no fuss when he disappeared for days on end, and I never asked him for time, sex, or commitment. I was unaware that I held half the power in the relationship. I was always waiting for him to decide what he wanted, to make a move, and to ask me for more. And then, with less than a month left on my graduate school student visa, the company I was working for admitted that they had not started the work visa process that would allow me to stay in the country. They suggested that I extend my student visa. I spent a week running around to different school offices and government agencies looking for a visa solution. That's when I learned you could not extend a student visa after the program is ended. University classes were already well underway, so applying for another degree was out of the question. Sponsoring my visa through my own business would cost me at least 600 euros per month, twice the cost of my apartment rent. Ultimately, I couldn't find a viable solution or a reason to stay. I realized I was tired of Romanian bureaucracy, tired of working as a corporate trainer, and tired of trying to make my Romanian life work in general. I was ready to move on. In 15 days, I needed to leave the country, collapsing the life I had built over several years in Romania. My cozy apartment, successful corporate training and language tutoring business, cat ownership, plans with local friends, and my undefined relationship with Constantine would all come to their unique ends. Constantine was away at a mountain hiking retreat, and he had told me he would have unreliable service while there. Although I saw him appear on Facebook many times, he didn't contact me all week or the week after he came home. I decided not to bother him with news of my impending departure. I could already taste the bitterness of neglect, and my automatic response was always, "Fine, you obviously don't need me or care about me. I don't need you." After all, I had plenty to do, thanks to sorting and packing up my business, home, and emotions. Once I decided to leave Romania for good, my next move fell right into place. A friend invited me to stay with her in Istanbul while I planned the next phase of my life. I had been there the year before and fallen in love with the city, so it was an easy yes. A Romanian friend took my beautiful orange tabby, James. My landlord said my departure was perfectly timed because he wanted to renovate the apartment. I was ending an intense work contract in my business. Everything about my life in Romania wrapped up quickly and efficiently. A week before I left, Constantine finally called. My unimportance to him seemed validated by the fact that I had changed my entire life since he had last reached out to me. I gave him the news of my departure passively. "What?" he exclaimed. "No. What can we do?" "I've tried everything," I said. "I leave next week." "Let me make some calls," he said, taking charge. "Okay," I agreed, and we hung up. But his attempts to solve my visa issue hit the same walls mine had. There wasn't anything to do. We said our goodbyes, and I gifted him some of my favorite philosophy books for good measure. I had never allowed myself to fall in love with him, but I did think he was wonderful. I packed up my apartment into 3 large suitcases, stored some of my belongings with a friend, and boarded a plane for Turkey. I felt blown by the wind, unsure of what to do next with my life, and totally exhausted from my last month in Romania. I spent my first few weeks resting in the limbo of a lost life and the pure potential of my next chapter. I walked along the shores of the Sea of Marmara and felt life force coming back to me. I began to remember a time when I was less apathetic about my life. I could do anything. What would I possibly choose? I decided to try dating again. Only this time I would do it differently. I was no longer going to try to find the one. I was simply going to practice the dating and intimacy building techniques I had learned. I got on a dating app and began the work of finding matches in Istanbul. I applied what I had learned about dating psychology and feminine energy in the last months in Romania. Like a good dating scientist, I had to see for myself whether this energy thing had any validity. Immediately, dating went different for me. In the very first month I used feminine energy, I found a dating connection with a man that was everything I had ever dreamed of. Sexy, intimate, fresh, and interesting, yet not obsessive on my end. As it went, I didn't stay in Turkey long term. My next chapter took me all around the world again, allowing me to date multiple men from various cultures. Using the teaching in this book, I shifted into a completely new dating paradigm. I raised my feminine sexual energy higher and higher and attracted greater numbers of men, while also experiencing more profound connections with them. I met interesting and sexy men who wanted and pursued me over and over again. It was a revelation. Without changing who I was, I became desirable. Men flirted with me, asked me out, called me back, and wrote to me after I had left their countries. Men treated me like I was precious, bought things for me, traveled to see me, and asked me for commitment. Thus, the journey of feminine seduction began for me. For the first time in my life, love and romance became fun rather than stressful or heartbreaking. I became someone who knew how to get what I wanted in love. At a point in the middle of my journey, I thought, why doesn't everyone know this? So many women I spoke to felt down about how their love lives were going or not going. So many women had disempowering hang-ups about dating and sex. I wanted everyone to know it doesn't have to be this way. I created a business to empower women to show up differently in relationships. I used my background in teaching to create a curriculum that taught women to access power in dating, sex, and love. I began teaching women to experience the same transformation I did, to master the art of feminine seduction. This book is that curriculum in written form. If a new dating paradigm is what you seek, you have come to the right place. So now available wherever books are sold, The Art of Feminine Seduction, written by myself, Alana Mackenzie Page. I highly recommend if an amazing, incredible, juicy, fun, exciting connection, long-term committed connection often is what you're craving and you just can't find it. This book can change your life. It's everything that changed my life, and I want the same for you if that's what you want too.